Have you ever found yourself in a situation where standing for what's right seemed impossible? What if you were in a foreign land, surrounded by people who didn't believe in your God, and everything seemed stacked against you? Daniel's story is not just an ancient tale, but a living testimony of God's faithfulness and power in the face of adversity. Today, let's walk through his life and see how he remained faithful to God and became an example of courage, wisdom, and divine protection. Daniel's journey begins during a dark period in Israel's history. The once prosperous nation of Israel was conquered by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. He destroyed Jerusalem and took many of its people, including the young and talented, into exile. Among them was Daniel, a young man of noble heritage, likely a teenager at the time. The king, in his wisdom, decided to take the best and brightest of the captured Israelites and train them to serve in his palace. Daniel, along with his 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were selected for this special training. They were given new names, Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and a new life in Babylon, far from their homeland. Now, imagine the pressure Daniel and his friends must have felt. They were in a foreign land, surrounded by foreign customs, gods, and practices. It would have been so easy to blend in, to give in to the culture around them. But Daniel made a bold decision. He chose to remain faithful to God's laws, even when it meant going against the king's commands. In Daniel 1, we learn about one of Daniel's first challenges. The king ordered that all the exiled young men be trained in Babylonian ways, which included eating the king's rich food and drinking the royal wine. But Daniel knew that this food violated the Jewish dietary laws. Rather than being defiled by what was offered to him, Daniel chose a different path. He requested to be given only vegetables and water, instead of the rich food of the king's table. This was no small request. The chief official was nervous because he feared that Daniel and his friends would appear weak compared to the others who ate the royal food. But Daniel persisted, offering a simple test: for 10 days, allow them to eat only vegetables and water. If they were not healthier than the others, then they would agree to eat the king's food. God honored Daniel's faithfulness. After 10 days, Daniel and his friends were healthier and stronger than the others. The chief official was amazed. And so, Daniel and his friends were allowed to continue their diet, and God gave them knowledge and understanding in every aspect of their training. In fact, they were found to be 10 times better than all the other magicians and enchanters in the kingdom. Daniel 1 verses 17 to 20. Enjoying this video? Please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell to get the latest videos we uploaded. As time passed, Daniel's wisdom and understanding grew, and he became favored by King Nebuchadnezzar. But one night, the king had a troubling dream. The dream was so disturbing that he could not sleep, and he demanded that his wise men interpret it. However, they could not. The king threatened to have all of them killed if they didn't explain the dream and its meaning. In desperation, Daniel and his friends prayed for God's mercy. That night, God revealed the dream and its interpretation to Daniel in a vision. In the morning, Daniel went before the king and, instead of taking credit for himself, humbly acknowledged that it was God who had revealed the dream. Daniel explained that the king had dreamed of a great statue made of various materials: gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay. The statue represented the rise and fall of kingdoms. At the end of the dream, a stone was cut out without hands and struck the statue, breaking it into pieces. The stone became a mountain that filled the whole earth. Daniel interpreted this as a prophecy of future kingdoms that would rise and fall, with God's eternal kingdom ultimately triumphing over them all. The king was astonished, and he praised the God of Daniel, acknowledging his wisdom and power. Daniel 2 verses 46 to 47. As King Nebuchadnezzar's reign continued, his pride grew. He ordered the construction of a massive golden statue and commanded that everyone in the kingdom bow down and worship it. Anyone who refused would be thrown into a blazing furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel's 3 friends, were caught in a difficult situation. They could not worship the idol, as it went against God's commandments. When the king heard of their refusal, he was enraged and ordered that they be thrown into the furnace. The flames were so hot that the soldiers who threw them into the fire were killed by the heat. But God miraculously protected Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The king looked into the furnace and saw not 3 men, but 4, walking around unscathed. The 4th figure was like the son of the gods. God had sent an angel to protect them. The 3 men emerged from the furnace without even the smell of smoke on them. Nebuchadnezzar was amazed and declared, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants." Daniel 3 verse 28. Years passed, and Daniel continued to serve faithfully. But under the reign of King Belshazzar, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, the kingdom began to decline. One night, while the king held a great feast, a mysterious hand appeared and wrote a message on the wall: "Mean, tekel, parsin." No one could interpret the words, and Belshazzar was terrified. Once again, Daniel was called to interpret the writing. He told the king that the message was a judgment from God. Mean meant that God had numbered the days of the king's reign and brought it to an end. Tekel meant that the king had been weighed and found wanting. Perez meant that the kingdom would be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, the Persian army conquered Babylon, and Belshazzar was killed. Daniel 5 verses 30 to 31. The final chapter of Daniel's life is one of the most famous stories of the Bible. Under the reign of King Darius, Daniel continued to serve as a trusted advisor. But some of the other officials were jealous of his success and sought to bring him down. They knew Daniel was a man of prayer and saw an opportunity to trap him. They convinced King Darius to issue a decree that no one could pray to any god or man except for the king for 30 days. Knowing this, Daniel didn't hide his faith. He continued to pray to God 3 times a day, as he always had. The jealous officials caught Daniel in the act of prayer and brought him before the king. Despite his love for Daniel, Darius was bound by the law and reluctantly sentenced him to be thrown into the lion's den. That night, the king could not sleep, but Daniel was protected by God. The next morning, Darius rushed to the den and called out for Daniel. To his amazement, Daniel answered, saying that God had sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions, and he had not been harmed. King Darius was overjoyed and ordered Daniel to be lifted out of the den. Then he issued a decree that all the people in his kingdom should honor and fear the God of Daniel, who had delivered him from the lions. Daniel's story is a powerful reminder that God is with us through every trial, even when we face opposition, danger, or uncertainty. Daniel's faithfulness and courage in standing firm in his beliefs, even when it seemed like everything was against him, showed the world that God's power and protection are real. Daniel trusted in God's wisdom, grace, and sovereignty, and in the end, God used him to influence kingdoms and change hearts. His life encourages us to remain faithful in the face of challenges, knowing that God's plan for us is greater than anything we can imagine.
Thank you for watching Daniel's story. If you like to watch more Bible stories and answer any questions you have, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Bible Questions Hub. Until the next video, God bless.